In the first episode of Natter with Nick, I'm talking to Don McCubbing, fisheries biologist and an expert on restoring damaged rivers and streams so that trout, salmon and char can return and thrive. It just happens that he's my son-in-law and father of Isla and Zanti, my grandchildren.
Hello, I'm old Nick, C.W. Nicol, and we're in the Afan Woodland Trust in northern Nagano. And with me is my son-in-law Don McCubbing. He's a Scot, but he has two homes now, one in the north of Vancouver Island and one in North Vancouver. Don's an expert in not only fisheries, especially salmonids, trout, char, salmon. He's also an expert in restoring damaged rivers and then monitoring them to see if the work that has been done is effective. And is that pretty well what you do?
That's pretty much what we do. Yeah. It's long-term work. You don't get success right away, but it's very gratifying when you get to see changes and you be part of it.
I've seen. I did a documentary on the spirit bear.
In fact, that's how we met.
Yeah, that's right. That was what, 14, 15 years ago?
Oh, yeah, something like that now.
And at that time, we saw a river that's been worked on for, I don't know,
over 35 years now.
35 years, the Keogh River. And last year, when I visited, I was astounded at the number of salmon there.
Yeah, we had a return of over 100,000 pink salmon, and that creates a lot of nutrients to the river, and it's been great to see the effects.
What about some other rivers that you've worked on?
Well, I've also worked on some rivers that are affected by hydropower projects. There's a lot of hydropower in Canada as there is in Japan, and a lot of those rivers have reduced flows or different flows than they would have done naturally. And one of the biggest ones is the Cheakamus River that we work on.
I went to see that too.
And there's a North Van Outdoor School there, a school that's all about outdoor education, and they have something like 50 kilometers of salmon spawning channels in their acreage, and we watched a new channel being built.
Yes, and they opened it, and within 30 minutes or less, it was full of salmon.
Indeed, so much so that my children were nearly catching them with their own hands.
Yeah.
So, and that river actually had a return of nearly 500,000 pink salmon, and this year we estimate around 29 million juvenile salmon went to the ocean from that river.
Wow.
And I'd call that recovered.
I'd call that recovery. We have a pond behind us. It's called Yayoi Pond. I dug the pond because during the melt, we have a lot of snow here. During the melt, there would be puddles all over, full of tadpoles, but then it would dry up and the tadpoles would die. Yeah. So we dug this pond, and when I dug down about 2 meters, there were river boulders and shards of Yayoi pottery, about 3,000 years old.
Wow.
So there must have been a river through here. So I dug the pond to make a habitat and also to improve trees. But I like ponds. I don't like dams very much. I can see the necessity for dams, but I'd like to say to the water, please wait a while and then you can go. Not stop.
Yes.
What is your thought on dams?
Well, dams, especially hydro dams, which are operated for power, the problem is that the levels in the lakes go up and down so much that you don't get this natural banking with vegetation and growth of weeds. You just end up with what's really a reservoir of, could be a concrete box full of water for the amount of life that a lot of them have. But again, we're working on some big reservoirs now in British Columbia where we're looking to see the impacts of how things are operated, and maybe there's a way we can run them differently but without affecting power production that can be better for fish and fish habitat.
The trouble with dams, if you don't build them right, is the same that you have with ponds. They silt up.
they do, and many dams around the world have silted up, and which were built for power and are no longer really effective for power. In fact, in North America now, quite a lot of dams are being removed, and fish habitats being restored because they've outlived their lifespan.
Yeah. With a pond like this, we will remove the silt, and we'll take out all the carp that get in there, especially the crucian carp, and we'll eat them. And we use the silt as a fertilizer, because once it's aerated, it's good fertilizer. But when I built the pond, I knew it was silt up.
Yeah,
so it's different from a dam.
Still have to maintain it, but it's worth it.
We acquired this area up here for our Woodland Trust about 10 years ago, and during the war, the Pacific War, they'd been digging for red earth, which was a very poor iron ore. But what happened was the groundwater flow was all stopped.
Yeah.
And the trees were very sick. So we built 450 meters of waterway with some ponds for habitat, mainly to get the groundwater flowing for the trees. And this area here is just before we put the water into the stream. So I wanted to mix oxygen in it.
Yeah.
And there are 12 little waterfalls down to a stream which actually has trout in it. So this is a very small example of playing with the habitat.
Playing or restoring, depending which way you look at it.
Yeah.
Playing with the habitat maybe was when we destroyed it in the first place.
No, we didn't destroy it.
Not you, but no, the digging for the red earth.
For the red earth, yeah.
Yeah.
And we started off with only one species of dragonfly that we could see here. Now we have 43.
I don't think I've ever seen 43 species of dragonfly anywhere.
Really?
No, I mean, I've seen 4 or 5 in one place, but 43.
And then we have, frogs, newts, salamanders, water scorpions, mantis, the water mantis with a snorkel up its bum.
Yeah, I've seen those. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So, do you do any small stuff like this? Well, yeah, we do, and the biggest thing is to actually preserve the small streams in the first place, rather than to let them, be impacted. But unfortunately, on Vancouver Island, there's many places in British Columbia, the small streams were completely clear cut. And the big thing in those areas really is to re-establish the riparian growth, re-establish the trees, and at a density that allows light into the stream, because otherwise, you don't get any algal growth, you don't result in any invertebrates, and there's going to be no fish habitat. So it does. It start just like here. It starts up in the uplands in British Columbia, and that's your birthplace of your stream.
Because we're 700 meters here, and I'll show you what should be a salmon stream.
Yes.
I think like you and also Robert Bateman, people like him, that you have to take care of the little places.
Indeed.
They're like the blood vessels that lead to the arteries. People concentrate just on the arteries, but you can kill your hand by cutting off
a finger.
A finger, get gangrene.
Absolutely, and small streams like this on the west coast of Canada, they generally do have fish in them. They have either cutthroat trout or char in them, even as small as this. And the stream that it flows down to would even at 700 meters in Canada, provided there's access to the ocean, would almost certainly have coho spawning in it. So coho will easily. I know streams that I work in regularly that are well above 700 meters that have coho salmon spawning in them, and they're only literally you could step across them. They don't have to be very large streams to be important.
Well, I'll show you a stream that certainly has little char in it. and until 27 years ago when I began buying this land, which is in northern Nagano, as you know.
Yeah.
It was full of garbage.
Right.
So I cleaned the stream and I did something about the vegetation on the banks of the stream, and I'll show you that afterwards. You know, we have groups of children come here, especially groups of children who have sight difficulties, sight impaired, and I talked to them about streams, and I said, okay, like one like this, it's laughing.
Yes, I understand what you're saying.
And if you have a laughing stream in the woods, it's probably okay to drink. It's certainly okay to play with. It's not dangerous.
True. Yeah, there's oxygen in the water. You don't have stagnant water, and the First Nations people of the Lilloa area that I'm working in right now in British Columbia, they talk about the song of the water, because it's almost, you know,
it's a song.
It's kind of laughter and song and sound, and that's oxygen being added to the water, which is required by everything that lives in it.
Right. Well, let's go and see a slightly bigger one.
I'd love to.
This is man-made. I'll show you one that was man-saved.
Great, thank you.
I bought this part of the Woodland Trust 28 years ago, and of course this stream was there, but you couldn't see it because it was full of garbage. So I cleaned out all the garbage, and then along the banks were a lot of I'm trying to think of the word. Walnut trees.
Walnut trees, yeah, they're not particularly good for animals.
And so we had nothing in the stream. Nothing was living in the stream. So I cut the walnut trees and I planted all these horse chestnut and oaks and beeches and Japanese dogwood, and you just walked up.
Yeah, there was a small char that was in the pool right here below us as I walked up with the kids, and in my misspent youth, or maybe not, I would have been leaping in there and trying to tickle it out. And I'm pretty sure that it was 4 or 5 inches long, even though there's only a few inches of water there.
Yeah. Yes, as I always say, these small streams are so important. But the other thing is, we've tested this water, and you could give it to your kids.
Yeah. Good quality.
It's good quality water.
And again, it's living.
It's living.
You can hear the little cascades over the rocks here. And so you didn't do anything else to this one. You just took the garbage out and replanted the trees. The river is left the same.
And we have to watch out for invasive species. There are a few invasive species of plants that, because we are a trust, the environmental agency says we don't want them there.
Right.
So we really do a lot of work to clean them out. But if you go to the national parks, they're
everywhere. And do those choke the streams? Is that they'll actually kind of?
They will choke over the streams, but they'll choke out the natural vegetation. Sometimes we will take areas of stream and decide to put the light back in there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and again, as we were saying, light's important because it allows the algae to grow. The algae allow the little bugs to grow, and it's the little bugs that the char feeds on. Right. The beginning of the cycle.
In this Woodland Trust, which is just 30 hectares, we've got a dozen streams and water courses that we've made, and they all run to a river that joins a bigger river that runs to the Japan Sea.
And it was once a salmon river.
And it was once a salmon river, yes. And I don't know if salmon would come up this far, but certainly we've got char, and they are supposedly running to the
ocean.
To the ocean, yeah.
Char certainly do run to the ocean in some rivers.
You can do so. if you work with nature, it's so much fun, isn't it?
When I first bought this land in 1986, the woods were dense scrub, few birds or animals, and the little streams were clogged with garbage. You can achieve so much if you work with nature, which is exactly what Don does.
This is the Tori River, which runs into the Cheakamus River, which then runs into one of the biggest rivers in Japan called Shinano, which then goes into the Japan Sea. And until the end of the war, about 60 years ago, this was a salmon river. But the dams were put on, especially on the Cheakamus, and it was concreted. This could have been a concrete sluice. There was a massive flood here that washed away the road down below, and bridges and so forth, and they were going to just concrete up the banks. And that's when I called, you've met him too, Dr. Fukutome Shubu. He was the greatest expert in Japan on river restoration and flood control. So I called him, and the first time in Japanese history that a government construction plan was on a river was changed. And Fukutome-san said, he didn't want any concrete at all. There's some concrete. He said, use the natural boulders, make riffles, make little backwater floods. And although we've released salmon here, they've not come back yet, but there's reasons for this. There are lots of char and bullheads. And this is a little bit smaller than the Kyo, but not that much.
Not that much different. The Kyo, where we've done a lot of restoration work, as you know, in North Vancouver Island, in the summer it gets as low as this, and it still has large numbers of salmon returning every fall. But it's connected to the ocean with no dams, so there are rivers in the interior of British Columbia where they're this size and they have salmon. There are no dams, and there are rivers where there are dams and there's no salmon. A problem with access is always the big issue.
Can you have dams and salmon?
That's a good question. There are places where there are both in British Columbia and in Washington State, and then there are places where dams have excluded salmon. But you have the water quality because you have the juvenile char and the bullheads. So it becomes access for the salmon to get back to their natal stream to spawn. And if they can get here in sufficient numbers, then they'll rear and they will potentially return. But you need fish ladders for them to get over the dams, and you need access for the juvenile fish to go downstream to the ocean.
I've seen fish ladders in Japan that were designed for long-legged hippopotami. There's jumps, but there's no depth of water for the fish to get up over. To jump. They don't have legs. So, this river actually it could become quite warm in the heat of summer, but there are ground swells coming in here.
And there's lots of examples in Canada
and
like
shade
that.
like that.
There's lots of examples in Canada of streams where the river does get really low in the summer, and the temperatures do get up into the 20-degree mark, which can be lethal. 24 degrees is typically lethal for salmon. But, as you say, if there's groundwater coming in, groundwater stays around 8 to 10 degrees year-round, and the fish know this, and they go and find these areas, and they hide in those areas when the river temperatures are warm. And that's what the char are doing, because char can't tolerate warm water. They're much worse at tolerating warm water than salmon. So again, although this may get warm, if char can live here, salmon could live here. So it's a challenge, perhaps. Is there a way of getting salmon back here? Because the habitat is being recreated, especially in this area. The conditions in terms of temperature and water quality and food are obviously there, so it becomes an access issue, and then it's an engineering solution to building things at the dam.
When Fukutome-san, Dr. Fukutome worked here, moving boulders and designing it, he didn't plant anything.
No.
He said, we'll let nature do it. So all these willows that you see, all up here, and all the other plants, they came in.
Yeah.
They came in. And we've had some big floods here since, and there's no problem.
Yeah.
It's perfect flood control and good habitat.
It is.
There's another thing I'd like to talk to you as a young father. The summer holidays are coming up here, and the school will tell the children, don't play in the river, and if you see any of your friends playing in the river, phone the school and tell them. And
why would they do that?
and I think that is dreadful. This is a great place for children to play.
Well, as you can see with my two children in the background,
my grandchildren.
I encourage my children to go play in rivers. It's what I did when I grew up. And the caterpillars are getting me. Sorry.
You're getting attacked by
I
caterpillars.
actually got spined. I put my hand on it. Sorry about that. We cut. I'll go back to that.
No, sorry.
That's okay. Now I'm paranoid. So, starting again. No, I actually encourage my children to go and play in streams. In fact, it's what I did when I was growing up, and that's how I ended up doing the job that I love to do. And I, whilst I'm not sure if my children would like to do the work that I do, they have a great time playing in and around water, and you know, there's really nothing unsafe about it.
No, this river floods, but it gives you time. You know, they've got a sign up here, this river is dangerous. Yeah, when it's in flood it's dangerous, but children have to learn which rivers are dangerous and when they're dangerous and what are the safer parts of the river. They have to learn that.
Yeah, and you learn quickly that when it rains hard, maybe being around rivers is not a good thing, but when it's bright and sunny like this.
But when we have thunder and heavy rain up on the Black Princess, on Kurohi Lane, then we know that within an hour or 2 hours the river will rise.
Yeah. But it doesn't. I don't imagine you get great flash floods through here.
No.
Not in the summertime when the kids are going to be playing.
No.
And
it rises gradually. And actually, this when we rebuilt this, that was an access. That slope up there was an access for the equipment to get down here. So it's an access for people.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that we get lots of children playing here in August, but they're all from out of town. Kids and rivers.
Yes.
On the Kio, which is similar to this, tell us the species of fish and animals that rely on it.
Well, we have 5 species of salmon in the river. We have coho salmon, pink salmon, some chum salmon. We have steelhead trout, local cutthroat trout, and we also have char, Dolly Varden, that migrate, both resident and that migrate to the ocean.
Do you have any smaller fish?
There's a lot of coddids, and some sticklebacks in some of the ponds, and I'm sure there's other species that I haven't come across yet.
I've certainly seen bears there.
There are bears there, and that's very different from my childhood playing on rivers, where and that's where I got enthusiastic for working around rivers was tickling trout, as we talked about earlier. In my summer holidays, I would spend all my time catching fish, putting them in a bucket, and usually putting them back at the end of the day. But I didn't have to worry about bears. But having said that, bears they're there for fishing too, and they're not really interested in us as people.
I know my granddaughters.
Yes.
Your daughters. They're not scared of bears. They're just careful of them.
No, they grew up around rivers on Vancouver Island, where they're in the fall when there's lots of salmon, and there's hundreds of thousands of salmon returning to some of the rivers like the Kio. the bears are pretty focused on eating, and as long as you leave them alone and leave their cubs alone, then they're not really a threat.
I wish Dr. Fukudome was still around.
Yeah, that's
He really wanted to come to see your work in Canada, you know?
Well, maybe this is a good project area for us to start some collaborative work. And
Yes.
we talked about maybe trying to encourage Japan to get involved in World River State.
Yes.
And this is right by where you live, and part of the network of streams that come from your forest would be perhaps a pretty good place to have the first gathering for World River State.
And use the whole system, you know,
Yeah.
the little rivers from my place and this one, and then the bigger Cheakamus.
And educate the local children that rivers are not bad places to be.
Actually, right behind the camera is my dojo, where I still dodder around doing karate, and upstairs is my study where I write novels. My house is 80 yards beyond here, so I have the sound of this river while I'm working, and I open the window and enjoy the song of the river, and it really it calms me down, especially when I come back from Tokyo. I love to be there.
And when I'm working on some of my reports for the work that we do on the Kio River, I'm usually sitting in my office window of my house in Port Hardy, and whilst it doesn't unfortunately look over the Kio River, it looks over one of the neighbouring rivers, and I always know when the salmon are starting to return because the seals show up in the bay, and then I know it's time to get out on the river and start doing some work.
My daughter Miwak was very happy, and it was just a chance. She was coordinating a movie with Hokkaido Broadcasting.
She was, yeah.
On salmon and bears.
Yeah.
And we went to the Kio, and there were you. Very grumpy that we were there. I noticed that.
Generally, I think it's difficult being disturbed when sort of being disturbed when you're in the middle of work that you're involved in. But having said that, the exposure that documentaries like the one you're involved in provide on the work that we're doing and the importance of it are something that, looking back, are well worth doing.
So, happy rivers make happy people.
They do make happy people.
Happy rivers, happy people.